Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. Each week, I, Brad Harris, am joined by some pretty hunky studs to talk about movies, something that we love quite a bit on this show. Hence the moniker Movie Bears podcast. I guess it makes sense. Whatever. As usual, I'm joined by Jim Pugliafico.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis.
Hey, listeners, viewers, welcome back.
And we are very delighted back. Delighted back? Jesus, Brad. Jesus, it has been a long work day. We're delighted to welcome back an old dear friend of the Movie Bears podcast, Bill Zanowitz from the Comic Book Bears podcast. We are incredibly happy to have you back, Bill. How you doing?
I'm doing good, and hello, and viewers, and hello, listeners. I don't know how that works, but
This is interesting. You know, last time we did this, we weren't on video, so we didn't really get to see it.
That's right, yeah.
And I'm going to lock video on Bill for a minute so you can all see how magnificently hot he is. Look at that. Yeah. Look at that. Look how cute he is. Oh, yeah, show us those guns. Green. Well,
no. Go pack.
Okay, we're turning video off you now.
I'm sorry. It's like, I'm so draft crazy right now.
Are you?
Oh, God. I can't wait for it to be over.
Oh, man.
Draft crazy like you're doing like a fantasy thing?
First time in about 17 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, only first round, though. Only first round. I had a cutoff at that point.
Uh-huh.
But, yeah.
You'll have to give us a clinic sometime. I don't know if any of us do. I know I don't do it. I don't think Brad has.
Yeah, I'm certain there is a part of me that's a gambler, so I kind of avoid it in the regular season. You know, I'll do football pools at work. That's as far as it goes. But it amazes me how much time people dedicate to the fantasy stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's your life, and
I've heard the stories.
Yeah, yeah. But this draft time has been fun. But it's that whole contingency thing. Like if the Chargers take this guy, then this guy moves up on mine from 5. Oh, forget it.
It's like you need spreadsheets, bust out the
Oh
application.
man.
Yeah.
Will, it sounds just like when we talk Survivor, you know?
It's just like that, only, I don't know, like Survivor makes me feel really nerdy when I talk nerdy about
it. Awesome. Well, Bill, it is a big pleasure to have you back. Welcome. We're discussing the newest Spider-Man film this week, hence the Comic Book Bears podcast tie-in. We always love having you guys here when we dish comic book movies when it works out. So we're gonna rely maybe on some of your comic booky knowledge. Will, I know you're a big comic book dude too, so I'm sure you'll weigh in on a couple things. But before. Do that again, Will. That was funny. Do it for our live stream.
Thwip. Yeah, nice. Spider-Man sounds. Yeah.
He's even wearing red. Look at that, lady. Wearing red. That's awesome. So, all right. Okay, so before we review the new Spider-Man film, however, we're going to talk about some interesting stuff going on in the film world right now. So, here we go. We're going to talk a little movie news.
I assume there's a theme.
Yeah, we give a little pause so that we can do a little movie news intro music. It's like dun 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 dun.
Oh
dun,
yeah. Now
didn't you just hear it? I mean, come on. We just.
Oh boy. All right. Gosh. Okay. So movie news, guys. Jim, why don't you kick us off? What do you got this week?
Oh yeah, mine's not a big story this week, but a little one that caught my attention. You guys who are regulars know that I got kind of a soft spot for documentaries, really good ones. And one of those which really kind of flipped me out when I saw it back in 2008 was a documentary called Man on Wire, which I think won the documentary Oscar that year, if I'm not mistaken. It's a story of a guy, he's a Frenchman named Philippe Petit, who in 1974 strung up a wire at night between the tops of the Twin Towers and the two, the World Trade Center towers when they were still standing, and in the morning walked across in broad daylight across between the two towers. Well, I just saw that Robert Zemeckis is going to direct a movie, a narrative movie based on that same story on that guy called To Reach the Clouds, and it's it's going to star Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the lead role, and it's going to have Ben Kingsley in the cast. I saw that, and so I'm kind of looking forward to that one. I don't know if any of you guys saw the documentary or not.
I haven't. Although I'm excited to hear JGL's attached.
Yeah, he's going to be doing it. It's coming out near the end of 2015. Right now, it's slated for October of 2015. But this was one that just popped up today, and I'm like, wow, I'm really excited about this. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's one of my like treasured little movies. That documentary, I'm kind of a little skeptical and leery about them giving it the full Hollywood treatment. So we'll see how it turns out. I don't know if the movie will lose some of its impact for me and its emotional resonance, but we'll see where the project goes. Brad, did you see this one with me?
I did see this one with you. We see so many movies together that I know they all run together, but I fondly remember watching this movie in our underwear laying on the couch. So
yes, yep.
Yeah, it's a good film. I really enjoy it a lot. I don't know that enjoy is the right word. It's I don't know. It trips some of my triggers. Again, I don't know that I'd say enjoy. When I think of enjoy, I think like Frozen or Superman 2.
Yeah. It's not a musical.
Yeah, do you want to walk a tightrope? But yeah, it's good. I mean, it's kind of I don't know. It's just really fascinating. I really appreciate it. So I'm interested to see what a narrative version would be like. I just hope it's not, I don't know, boring.
Yeah, well, I mean, given the Hollywood treatment, who knows what they're going to do with CGI and all that stuff. But like I said, what got me about the original documentary was not that it was amazing that this guy planned and executed this clandestine mission to string a freaking wire between the tops of the two trade centers past all the security at the time, and get up there and do that at night and then walk across it during the day. But just how the movie was set up as kind of a heist or a caper movie, the way the documentary was paced, and also it had some surprising emotional beats. The movie did not center on the fact that the World Trade Centers were no longer the World Trade Center towers were no longer standing. This wasn't we miss what was once the shining landmark in New York and symbol of New York. This was a movie focused, and it could have easily gone there because the movie was made in 2008. But it totally kind of sidestepped that and focused on the feat that this guy did, and I appreciated the movie for that. But anyway, that's it. So we'll be looking for that and news about that between now and then. Awesome.
Good stuff. All right. How about you, Will?
Mine's kind of a small news item, but it's something I'm geeking out over anyways. So here at the Movie Bears podcast, we really liked Woody Allen's last feature, Blue Jasmine. I think all of us had pretty positive things to say about it, and I want to say it made a lot of our, if not all of our top 10 lists. So the news has come out that Joaquin Phoenix, who is my current, he's my favorite actor. He's the guy that when I see him in something, I'm already drawn towards it. He's coming off of great turns in Her and The Master a little before that. The announcement is that Woody Allen's next new film that he's working on, it'll come out in 2015 as well, will be a collaboration between Woody Allen and Joaquin Phoenix. I'm geeking out over that. There's not a whole lot about it that we know about it at this point, just that they're going to be working together, and that Woody Allen has one more movie coming up between now and then. This year he has Magic in the Moonlight will be his summer movie, but I don't know. What are you guys thinking? Do you think Woody Allen and Joaquin Phoenix will be a match made in heaven, or do you think this will be too much of a good thing in one place?
I love Joaquin Phoenix. I'm just really afraid that the scandal with Woody Allen is totally going to pull away from this film. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
Hey, Will, did you see? I'd be excited about Woody Allen's new movie. Anytime Woody Allen puts out a movie, people take notice. and lately, I mean, with his recent resurgence with Midnight in Paris and then Blue Jasmine, I think the guy's still making great movies. So I'll be looking for it. Did you hear the latest news though?
What's the latest news
about this movie project? Emma Stone is also attached.
Oh,
What?
that's even better.
Yeah.
Woody Allen, you're right. Like he's on he's really on an uptick in terms of like his career in terms of like where it's at right now. I mean, obviously Woody Allen has a hell of a resume behind him, but he's been on a one movie a year role, which continues this year, goes on into the next year, and of course, I know Brad, you'd mentioned the scandal and hoping that it doesn't pull too much away from him. I think that we were fortunate in that Blue Jasmine was so well regarded and that Cate Blanchett's role was so well regarded in that it distracted from a lot of that. And I'm hoping that now that we've got a little bit of time from, I guess, the last year around awards time, there was a lot of like blog posts going on that brought the old issues to light and kind of had different people voicing their opinions on them. By this summer, and then of course by 2015, I think enough distance will have passed that it won't be in the forefront of people's minds. But you never know. Maybe there'll be a resurgence in Woody Allen scandal news as well.
Well, he's got a movie coming out this summer called Magic in the Moonlight.
Right.
Yep, Magic in the Moonlight is his
and
next
that one
film.
has Emma Stone, and she's also attached to the new one. So it's guy's crazy. I mean, he's still at his age. He's still pumping out movies faster than J.J. Abrams can. So
78 years old, kicking ass.
To be fair, J.J. Abrams' movies only involve like $3 billion worth of computer-generated effects. And
all right, fair enough. But I mean, I guess my point is, I think he's producing movies faster than probably 98% of the producer directors out there.
I love the Woody Allen versus J.J. Abrams comparison. Like that's going to make for like a hell of a debate. Like these are two directors who, when I think they're very very similar, very artistically and stylistically the same.
I just had this vision. I just had this vision in my head of like a
Don't
Woody
be
Allen.
mocking me.
I just had this vision in my head of like a Woody Allen Star Trek.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we had a
That's
Wes
crazy.
Anderson porn, so I imagine we could have that.
Oh jeez. All right. Interesting stuff. Yeah, I love Woody Allen's films, so I'm anxious to see these next two. I love Emma Stone as well, and how fitting that we're going to talk about her on today's show, maybe.
I'm sure we are.
All right, let's see. For me, I'm sure it's no surprise that even when other people are groaning every time Star Wars news comes up, I'm like, yay! I saw some new news come out that has got me kind of interested. Previously, we were hearing that there were going to be two Star Wars spin-off films, and they were going to be like origin story films. And word was it was going to be one on Han Solo, one on Boba Fett. I guess now CEO Bob Iger of Walt Disney Company offered kind of an update on the spin-off movies and says now there's going to be at least 3 of the spin-off movies that are in development to be released alongside the new trilogy that's coming out. Still looking at potentially a Han Solo and Boba Fett film. They're being written by Simon Kinberg and Lawrence Kasdan. So, Lawrence is involved with these films as well, apparently. But word is maybe that the third film will involve like a Yoda origin story. And given how old Yoda is, that has me particularly excited because that's a totally new era of Star Wars we've never seen, on film before. So I think it's kind of interesting. What do you guys think? Like, is this like Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money, or is this something that's really interesting? What do you think, Bill? We haven't heard from you in a while.
No, I think it is really interesting in that it seems that there's going to be these parallel tracks where you have what I assume is going to be the last 3 in trilogy, and an offshoot that will expand the universe more and again bring in more money. But I think it will give a chance to for stories that otherwise would have been told in expanded universe books or animation, and I'm very excited for that, provided that the right people are behind it.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I have my doubts. I mean,
yeah.
This kind of a formula isn't working out very well for Marvel, so I don't know how it's going to work for Star Wars.
Well, the thing is that
I'm kidding.
the thing is that this is a license to print money. Star Wars knows that, and anytime you've got a big franchise like this, certainly like the money's going to come in hand over fist. So to Bill's point, it absolutely comes down to having the right people attached. Like, are the writers going to be good? Is the cast good? Is the continuity going to be good? Is the studio going to step in and like put too much in, say you got to do this, you got to do that because it's got to set up these 8 extra films? Probably. But as long as the end product turns out to be good, I don't care if they make 40 more of these things. Like, as long as they're enjoyable, I'll show up.
Yeah, I mean, my comment was just, I mean, apparently they've definitely taken notice of what Marvel is doing with their universe, right? They've got their Avengers, which would be like your Star Wars movies, and then you've got your Iron Mans and Thors and everybody else, and they're making these what do they call them? Singular or feed-in movies, whatever they call them.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're going to do the exact same thing.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, like when you look at Marvel, you've got Disney Marvel, and then you've got what we're going to be talking about later on, Sony Marvel with Spider-Man. You've got what Warner Brothers is doing with DC. The ones that I've been, just me personally as a fan, have enjoyed the best has been what Disney has done with their Marvel franchise. Disney is the one behind Star Wars, so I'm hoping that maybe they'll be applying some of the same things that I enjoy over in the Marvel side of things to the Star Wars side of things. Right. Disney's really poised to make a shitload of money, aren't they? Star Wars, Marvel, and like after Frozen, they're going to be all over like a new surgence of like animated films as well. Man, I would love to see their books.
They're going to close down the park. They're going to close down the parks and just do movies.
I'm okay with that. Maybe. All right. Well, interesting stuff. Yeah, I don't know. The new Star Wars films could be total shit. You never know. But I trust J.J. Abrams. I trust Lawrence Kasdan. I think there are some really good things in store. I'm just hoping that next year when we go to the first film, it's not a rehash of how I felt during The Phantom Menace, because that would destroy me. That would crush me.
I got a question. Oh.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I had a question for movie fans here. I have to be honest, the one difficulty I'm having processing about Star Wars is a Star Wars film premiering so late in the year. Because it just seems to me that May is the time. And I was just wondering what your guys' take was on that.
Well, is it December? Is it like around the Wookiee Life Day celebration?
I think it's like December 15th.
Yeah. Well, it's all about the Wookiee Life Day celebration. Hello, Bill. That's the whole reason.
Makes sense to me.
Chewbacca's family is going to come out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Lumpy. Yeah.
Tell me,
yeah, I know all about it.
Tell me, there's a Star Wars calendar app.
I'm sure there's got to be.
I bet there is. I need it because I don't know all these days you talk about.
From Disney's perspective, I'm sure what they're trying to do is they're putting all of their Marvel movies in and around the summer, because that's when they're going head-to-head with not only their the summer blockbusters, but going head-to-head with what Warner Brothers has lined up. December tends to be another time for like these big franchises. You remember like the Harry Potter films would come out around that time of year, or to a lesser degree, I believe the Twilights did, and like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So, yeah, The Hobbit. So you do get some of these big budget CGI fests, usually ones that are maybe not necessarily family friendly, but the ones that you're gonna have a lot of people like, oh, hey, it's Christmas break, let's go see a movie together. So I imagine what they're doing is they're just spreading out their money so that they're not having to compete their Star Wars franchise versus their Marvel franchise.
There's that, but I also think that time of year is typically when we get a lot of the late run, like award nominee prestige films that are coming out, and so it's easier to set something like this against like really artsy movies. You know what I mean? Or films like Philomena. Like, who the fuck is going to go see Philomena when you can see Star Wars? You know what I mean? So I think it sets them up to, you know what I mean? Just get a bigger audience. Kids are going to be a huge audience for this film. Will, you're right. They're going to be on Christmas break. Kids are going to want to go see this movie 3 or 4 times probably. I don't know. I mean, I think it kind of makes sense. It's a good question, Bill. Absolutely. Yeah. But it just seems like they're really poising themselves to maybe also hit the Christmas Christmas merchandise marketing. You know what I mean? If Star Wars is coming out just before Christmas, what do all the kids want for Christmas? What are they going to ask for? Star Wars toys. So maybe it is the search for more money, but I don't know. I guess I'm okay with it.
You know, my thing is to see. I'm just curious to see if they're going to be able to recapture the magic that some of those Star Wars films, not all of them, but some of those Star Wars films had when they first came out. I mean, we know J.J. Abrams is an accomplished director, and we know it's going to be a star-studded cast. But I don't know, that movie, at least when I think back to the original Episode 4 movie around in the late 70s there, that thing had something magic about it. Those weren't big stars. You know, the director was known but hadn't done, you know, a ton of stuff by then. So I don't know. I just don't know if you can catch lightning in a bottle again. It'll be a big movie. Don't get me wrong, and a lot of it will be resting on its legacy, I think, in trying to recapture it. But I just don't know if it'll have the same magic.
Right. Well, I guess we'll see. You know what I mean? It's hard to say now, but yeah. So, all right, guys. Well, wow, we talked about Star Wars way longer than I thought we would, but that's okay. Brad. I know, right? Way to go, you stupid Star Wars freak.
You know we have a time limit, right?
I know, and I'm the one who runs the show. I should be watching the timer more carefully.
Yeah, it was good conversation. We like Star Wars.
Slap my wrist, bad moderator, you jerk, Brad. Okay, all right. Well, why don't we go ahead? We'll just switch gears a little bit here. I think we're pretty much set with movie news. Let's move on to discussing new Spider-Man flick. Opinions seem to be very diverse on this one in some cases. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about it. As usual, guys, just to give you a heads up, we will talk about the film spoiler-free and give some advice on whether you should go see it if you haven't yet. But who are we kidding? You probably saw it over the weekend. And then we'll jump into our spoilery review. So here we go, our discussion of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. All right, so as promised, we will be speaking about The Amazing Spider-Man 2 spoiler-free for several minutes to follow. Guys, why don't you give us some advice on whether you think people should go see this in theaters, wait for rental, or skip it entirely? Bill, as our resident, awesome, phenomenal comic book bear, what's your... Oh my God, Jim, what are you doing? Wow, Jim is wearing...
What do you mean, Jim?
That's Spider-Man.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Hi, Spider-Man.
Wait, Jim is Spider-Man? Spoilers!
Nice. Jim's rocking it. For those of you who are listening to the audio version...
What do you mean? I'm just a teenager with daddy issues. What are you talking about?
For those of you who are listening to the audio version, you cannot see Jim in his Spider-Man getup right now. So you should flee as quickly as possible to our YouTube channel, pull up the recording of the live stream, and check about 25 minutes in and see this. It's pretty fun. Anyway, all right, nice.
Can I just see it with just the glasses?
Yeah, nice.
Oh, that is awesome.
These are
the 3D glasses we got at our screening, actually.
Oh, that's cool.
They were actually giving them out for free. We didn't even have to buy these.
Oh, that's cool.
Awesome.
They look like Klaus Nomi. That's awesome.
They look like Spider-Man glasses and like old lady sunglasses.
All they need is that mesh, silvery mesh, mirrored surface, and they would be even better.
The glare on the glasses works just as well. All right. So, Bill, what did you think? Should people go see this one? Should they skip it? Wait for rental? What's your feeling?
I think they should see it. I think it has enough to recommend. I assume we're going to get into the 3D discussion later. But I think there's enough to recommend seeing it in a movie theater. I have to say I didn't like this film nearly as much as I liked The Amazing Spider-Man. And I know, Will, there's a difference of opinion there. I don't know about the other two gentlemen there. It felt too bloated to me. It felt like it was trying to cover too much ground, where I think that if it did hit some of the plot points that the film did spread over 2 films, would have been a lot more enjoyable experience.
Or yeah,
I'm right there with you, Bill. So in a lot of ways. So I think the only place where I differ a little bit is that I think I liked this one a little better than the first one, but ultimately there were a lot of flaws with this film. And it's hard for me to really recommend it for people just because the flaws are very, very, very transparent.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I saw with it was it's got a lot of narrative issues. You know, we talk about franchise building in these movies quite a bit. We talk about it with, like, when we did the Captain America review, and pretty much any time that we talk about superheroes from here going forward for the end of the foreseeable future, we'll be talking about how franchise building works. And I think this film did one of the worst jobs of it because it sacrificed its own narrative to introduce all of the things that we're going to see in The Amazing Spider-Man 3, The Amazing Spider-Man 4, The Sinister Six, and Venom. So we've got all of these other future films that we've laid the seeds for, when ultimately this film is just about responsibility. When you really trim it down to like what actually happens in this film, it trims down to like one little word, and then there's other stuff to showcase what's going to happen coming later. So it's hard for me to say to watch it. I did like it a little better than the previous one because I felt like Mark Webb got a chance to do kind of his 500 Days of Summer thing a little bit more, like let Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone just be charming together, and those scenes mostly worked for me. But like as soon as people put on the masks and started like being superheroes or supervillains, especially, the story really started to fall apart for me. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. You probably already saw it, audience. You probably have already seen it by the time we're talking about this, but. If you're not, if you're kind of on the fence, I would say, like, unless you just need to see something to just, like, kind of see really cool special effects on the screen, this one would be a pass for me.
Right.
Interesting, guys.
Interesting. Okay. Jim?
I think I'm getting this blockbuster comic book movie thing kind of down at this point. Like, I think I'm getting better. I did enjoy this movie quite a bit, and I do recognize that it's got a lot of narrative issues. But then again, I think that comes with the territory with some of these movies. I think you're right, Bill. I think you touched on it. This movie feels like it packed way too much in to the box that it had. I mean, without getting into too many spoilers, there's a love story in here. There's not one, not two, but 3 daddy issue stories in here. 3.5 villains in this movie. 2 of them with complete, full origin stories built right into this movie. And then you got all the other usual stuff. The CGI-packed chase scenes, mid-air dramas, and scientific lab shit. I mean, it's got too much, and I think that probably leads to a lot of the narrative disconnects that I think kind of bothered you. But you know what I mean? All that aside, if I put that aside and say, hey, I just got to dial in my expectations, go in, have a good time, enjoy the things that I like about it, avoid the big plot holes that, not avoid them, but kind of disregard the big plot holes. You can jump over them. There's some thin character development here, like jumps in character development where a character is acting one way in a couple of scenes, and then 2 scenes later they're like a totally different character, and you don't necessarily understand their full motivation. And we'll get into some of that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm getting the hang of it. What else can I say? All I will say is, it's a fun movie. If you haven't seen it yet but are planning to see it and can swing a few extra bucks, I will say go in for the 3D. I thought the 3D effect scenes looked quite good in 3D. So I don't think I'm about to sway anybody to see or not see this movie. But if you want to have a fun time, see the continuation of the new Spider-Man story, go see it and spring for the 3D.
Hey Jim, you said this was like you're getting the hang of this whole superhero movie thing. Would you say that this experience is kind of like your superhero movie origin story? Like this is like right before you bust on the spandex and start like swinging from movie theater to movie theater.
Yes,
like,
this is my coming out. This is my coming out.
Perfect.
I'm coming out.
Oh my God.
Oh my.
I want
Oh
my web to show. No, whatever.
wow.
Anyway,
Wow.
yeah,
I
like I
need a
said,
drink.
I'll never be a hardcore comic book fan. I mean, it's never too late in life to do anything, but
Mhm.
I just want to enjoy the movies for what they are. I saw two totally different movies this week. I saw this movie, and then we saw Under the Skin last week.
Mm.
Two totally different movies. I can enjoy them both, and that's a good thing.
All right. Let's see. For me, I enjoyed it. I don't know that I loved it. I liked it.
Mhm.
I think I have to chime in with what you're saying, Bill. I really, really loved the first film a lot, and a lot of the reason why I liked it was the Peter Parker Gwen Stacy stuff.
Mhm.
And Will, to your point, I know you said you found it kind of charming this time around. I didn't. I didn't at all. It just felt really forced to me, and I won't go into spoilers. There's one thing, later in the film where it got a little emotional resonance for me, but overall, it just felt like smarmy and a little unearned. There are moments where they're just it's going back and forth, and you're like, or at least I'm like, I don't care. Like, let's get back to the narrative of what's really happening. Like, this isn't cute anymore. Like, Peter Parker isn't about to dance along to a Hall & Oates song down the street.
Come on, you're 30-year-old high school juniors. Get over it.
Well, high school seniors.
Whatever.
But yeah, so I felt like the first film did a great job of setting a lot of that up. I appreciate the character development stuff. I like seeing what's happening between them. Obviously, it's kind of imperative to show some of those things. But I just felt like it was kind of boring. I felt like every time they were on screen together this time around, I was like tapping my fingers like, geez, can we get back to like the action stuff, which is a total reversal for me, because typically I'm like take the second Captain America film, for instance. I'm totally tired of the action stuff, and I want character development. I'm going to give me more of that.
Yeah.
But in this film, for some reason, it was a reverse for me. I mean, Bill, was that stuff between them kind of like a big sticking point for you? I mean, did it work, really?
I thought it worked pretty well. I imagine Stone and Garfield bickering is pretty close to Stacy and Parker bickering, and when you have something like that, I mean that's just that's just gold. Really.
But it works too because they're a real life couple, right?
Yeah.
And so some of that chemistry, I think, bleeds over onto the screen. I think that's I think what worked for me is like the two of them on screen together, I think, are better than if you had put any other person against them. Like the two of them just fed off each other in those scenes.
And going back to what Brad said, I think one of the aspects I liked most about the first film, when you were saying, Brad, we're doing this character development, let's get back to the action. I thought the first film married those two so well. Probably to date, my favorite scene in any comic book film is Peter's rescue of the kid in the car.
Totally.
And to me, that's my Peter Parker. That's something he would do. And you got both of them in that one beautiful sequence, one beautiful shot. And I was surprised that there was so little of that in this film. A little bit toward the end. I thought the end was very effective, as a coda. But we should have had more of that, because he's one of the few characters that you can apply that sort of heart-tugging emotion in these dramatic action scenes right in the middle of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think if we had interspersed more of that, it would have made it a much more engaging film for me.
Well, I think there were some pretty good emotional beats in there, so emotional moments, and we'll get into the specifics before, but not necessarily Peter and Gwen though. And I want to talk a couple of them that stood out for me, but yeah, I thought he had some. Brad, I think I fall more in line with you as far as the relationship goes. I mean, it was okay, but it got a little annoying because it's that same cliched, like, are we dating or are we broken up? Do we care for each other? Do we not? Kind of thing trope that plays over and over in some of these movies, and and it got a little tiring in this movie. And I know that's Mark Webb's thing, his strong point, because we both love 500 Days of Summer. I just didn't. It wasn't anywhere near the quality in that movie.
Yeah, and we kind of had a house of cards here too. Like, we can talk as much about did the chemistry work? Did it not? Did the costumes work? Did they not? There were so many things wrong with, I think, the narrative itself. Like, so many different plot details that were tossed in there and weren't really married to one another comfortably, that it was really hard for me to take any of the scenes super seriously, because I knew that in a couple moments I'd have to switch gears and watch movie number 2, and then I'd be back to movie number 1, and then I'd be back over to movie number 3. So I think that was, I guess, when I say that the chemistry was my favorite part, I don't mean that to say this was a great movie, the chemistry was fantastic. I mean it to say I had enough problems with some of the other things that was the one thing that kind of rose to the top by comparison. Yeah. So I'm damning it with very faint praise.
Apart from the sequence at the end, not to give too much away because we'll get with the spoilers, I had a very, very confused sense of the time span that this film took place. You have them graduating, and then they're in winter clothes, and that was where's the continuity, girl? I mean, that was, I imagine if you watched it again from that perspective, you'd go nuts.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of stuff like that where I didn't really get a fine linear sense of when things happened and how things progressed. Yeah.
Indeed. All right.
Good thing I wasn't paying that close attention to that.
Yeah.
Well, not every, superhero movie can have a countdown timer in every scene to let you know exactly where we are.
Batman, you better be following the timer on screen.
Looking at you, Captain America 2.
I thought he was talking about Batman.
Yeah, so for me, guys, I mean, I would say this is one that, if you like superhero movies, if you like Spider-Man, I would definitely go see it. Totally agree. I thought the 3D was really spectacular in some places. Was really impressed. We'll talk about some particulars. I think our new drinking game should be every time you hear us say, and we'll get to that in spoilers. That's when you should take a drink.
Yeah.
But
I think the 3D was even effective in scenes I didn't like, which was great. Kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you're not raring to go see a superhero film, I'd probably wait for rental. But I thought it was a fun ride. If you're going to see it in theaters, see it on the biggest screen with the best sound you can, because to do otherwise, I think would rob yourself of a pretty cool experience. So, all right. Well, we've been talking about spoilers 50,000 times already. Are you guys ready to get to it?
Yes.
Let's do it.
All right. Spoilers for The Amazing Spider-Man 2 are incoming. If you have not seen the film and you value your virginalitude about the film's plot, now would be your time, if you're watching live, to just kind of tune out for 30 or 40 minutes, go make a sandwich, have dinner, then come back and hear our plugs, because we have awesome plugs this week. And if you're listening to the audio version of the show, just refer to our time index. You can skip forward as needed. Or if you're some of those people who love spoilers, even if you haven't seen a film, feel free to hang on. Here we go. Spoilers. Fair game. Where do you want to start, guys?
Well, we usually jump in and go right to the end. I'm going to start at the beginning. Did anybody else get the sense that we were watching the exact same movie we saw the first time at the beginning of this movie, with a little bit more thrown in, maybe? They actually reused the same scenes, and maybe they were supposed to feel like flashbacks, but it actually felt like they were actually playing the same movie for a while. The whole scene where at the beginning, where Peter's parents are ushered away, at night, was lifted directly out of the first movie. And for a while there, I'm like, what the hell are they doing? How much of the first movie are they gonna?
Well, I wondered that too, because sometimes the theaters will show, the first film and then the second film, and I'm like, did we go into the wrong theater? Is this they're showing the first film first? But then, of course, it deviated, and I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, I totally felt the same way, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say from where I was sitting, yeah, I felt the same way as well. Like it's no secret to our listeners. Like I hated the first Amazing Spider-Man. There were a lot of things that just did not work for me. And the very first scene of this movie felt so reminiscent, not only because of the footage that was used, but also just like the focus on the Richard Parker storyline, which is one of the big problems I have with the storyline. It's like
Richard Parker.
It
Not that Richard Parker.
Oh, sorry.
we have this opening sequence that, to me, I guess if I was reshooting the film or something like that, I would have started this movie off with Spider-Man swinging through the streets, going after the Rhino, which was, I believe, the second scene. This is the second film of a superhero movie. He's established. Origin story's out of the way. Let's dive into seeing kind of slice of life action. We get to that, but instead we have to focus on this storyline through showing these characters who have a very small part to do with one of the three storylines that happens later on, but not one of the two main storylines that we start off with. So it made the film kind of start off with kind of a distracted focus. I would have, personally, if I was doing this, I would cut the Richard Parker stuff completely. Since I can't have that, I would have at least cut the opening sequence.
I am going to disagree with that. I think they've dedicated so much bandwidth to the Richard Parker element that I am completely expecting the third film to open with that sequence again. And again, and add to it in some form. We don't see the deaths, so
That's right, we don't. So the third one might have them, being pulled out from the wreckage and bunkered away somewhere.
So you get an echo?
No.
Okay, good. I fully expect that that's going to be expanded upon because to me it felt like a very deliberate choice, and that there was more thought behind it than a way of economically presenting elements from the first film. I might be wrong.
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. I mean, I definitely think they're building on it, and we keep getting doled out like bits and pieces of what's going on there. And clearly, whatever was happening with Richard Parker has some kind of greater, effect on what's happening with this build-up towards the Sinister Six, right? Like, don't we get the feeling that he was working on some of the stuff that's like kind of leading up to this? And so I'm sure we'll continue to get more of that.
Yeah.
We just got a lot. Go ahead.
Oh, I see a question. Just a quick observation. Campbell Scott, I have such an ear boner for him. He could read ingredients off of a packet of stuffing or something, and I'd be entranced. I love his voice.
Refresh my memory. Who is he?
Richard Parker.
Oh, Richard Parker.
Yeah.
Before we get off this track, I just had a great idea. You know how in Life of Pi the tiger Richard Parker is named after the hunter because the names got swapped on the paperwork, right?
Yep.
Maybe, just maybe, the Richard Parker that is Peter's father was the hunter in the story before Life of Pi.
You really have become a comic book nerd, Jim, because now you're reaching out to make all these connections that don't exist.
No, I love the idea that Life of Pi is in the Spider-Man universe.
It's in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, it is now canon as of this moment right now. As of Jim's origin story, it is canon.
Life of Pi will make you believe in Ultron. Hey, real quick, we have a live question from Dennis V here in Tucson, Arizona. Will, what does Dennis want to know?
Dennis V says, I have a question for all of you. Who do you like better playing Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield?
Let's take a vote.
Yeah. For me, I kind of have to split it into two categories because there's two parts of Spider-Man. There's Peter Parker and there's Spider-Man, and my answer is actually different for both of those. I think Tobey Maguire is a better Peter Parker, but I like Andrew Garfield, especially in this film, better as Spider-Man. I think this film, like the quips felt a little better, like he felt a little bit more natural in kind of the, I'm throwing out some barbs while I'm brawling. So I like Garfield better as Spider-Man. I think Maguire was a better Parker for me.
Interesting. Okay. How about you, Bill?
Garfield on both counts.
Yeah. How come?
hands down. I feel a genuine affection for the character on screen. I never felt with Tobey. I think Tobey had a few. I think the Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi films were good enough films with what surrounded him that it was a lot easier to take. But I was not enamored of Tobey Maguire at all. I wasn't crazy about any of the casting in the Raimi films. Period. So.
What's wrong with Mopey Maguire? Come on.
Mopey Maguire.
And I thought he was outright. He embarrassed the shit out of himself and humanity in the third film.
Oh, let's not even.
That was.
Let's not even talk about the third. Like, oh my god. All right, Jim. How about you? What are your thoughts?
I like Tobey Maguire in some other roles that he's done for sure, but I have to give the big edge to Andrew Garfield here. I just think he, and that's both as Peter Parker and as Spider-Man. I don't know. It's almost like comic book characters that live behind masks are difficult for me, especially when you can't see any facial expressions whatsoever. It's you'd have to try hard to convince me that there's a lot going. I know there's voice acting going on, but you know my feelings about voice acting. That's really only part of the story. I mean, if anyway, that all aside, I still think Andrew Garfield gets the edge.
I am going to totally agree with Bill, and I'm going to agree with Jim, and I'm going to agree slightly with you, Will. I really, really like Andrew Garfield. I think he does a really great job as Spider-Man. He's got that like frenetic pace. He's got sort of the ease of making the quips while he's doing all this action stuff. For me, that's one of the things I love so much about Spider-Man is he's always like telling jokes and cracking quips while he's doing this stuff. That's kind of like a big part of his character for me that I love. And I just felt like Tobey Maguire really sucked at that. Like whenever he would try and do that, it just felt so like flat and stiff and wooden to me. Some of that's writing, but I think some of it is just delivery too, and it just wasn't believable. It just didn't have the Spider-Man feel that I wanted. I did like Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker in the first film. In the second film, not so much. Third film,
third film.
Yeah, I know, right? It's kind of like back. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I do think that Toby's discovery of his powers, I thought that he was good in those scenes.
Agree, absolutely.
That I'll give him.
So I would like to see Garfield in. I thought that Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 1, the Raimi films, had vastly superior scripts to what Garfield's had to work with. So I would be very willing to change my answer if I could see Garfield in Maguire's role with like what I consider to be a better script playing that, because he might have actually done a better job. I can only judge kind of based on the finished products that came to me.
Do you think that you comic guys might know better, but as far as you can see where the third movie may be going, will Peter Parker be like out of his teens at that point?
Well,
like John, I know he's supposedly graduated high school, right?
Yeah, well, even in this one, we're like out of high school, right? So
he graduated this year.
Yeah, we've moved quickly out of high school. I know in the comics, and Bill, you might have a better answer in terms of like the actual time frame, but his high school age wasn't as long as his like post high school, like college age, and then going on into adulthood. They in the grand scheme of things, in the what are we talking, like 50, 60 years of this character's life at this point?
We're 50.
Yeah, 50. Yeah, 61. In those different years, we've got a smaller percentage of it was spent to the high school time than to the now I'm in college, now I'm married with kids, now I'm magically not, but like all of this like post high school stuff. So if the movies follow that same formula, then we're probably going to see Parker slowly evolve. Like the next one might be a couple years later. Like I don't think we're going to see like 30-year-old Parker, but I think we're probably going to be dealing with like early 20s.
Well, at least we know he won't have kids with Gwen Stacy.
That's probably true.
That's true. We did see a funeral, but I don't know. I guess she's dead. I don't know. I never trust the comics. Never.
Well, that's a fair point.
You can trust the comics on one thing, and that's that Gwen Stacy's purpose not necessarily at the time, but kind of in comic book lore, is to die in a very famous death scene.
And
again and again and again.
And Gwen Stacy's post-death history, you need flowcharts.
Oh my
there's a lot
God!
of
Yeah.
stuff that goes on there.
Really?
I have to say, with my co-host Justin, we had a huge disagreement about Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Really?
And yeah, he did not like the film at all. He's kind of warmed to it as time has gone on. And it was interesting because in the I haven't talked to him. We're recording on Thursday. He said he loved this movie 1,000 times more than 1, and I'm like, well, looks like we got a lot to talk about. And I do think that one of the reasons that I love the first film so much was because when I came into Spider-Man, I've been reading comics since I was 6 years old, so I came in right after Gwen Stacy's death. And it was the same writer, Jerry Conway, and it was a succession of artists from Gil Kane to Romita, back and forth, and then Ross Andrew. And to me, the first film embodies that particular spirit much better than that. It feels like my Spider-Man, much more than any other incarnation outside of the comic books. And I'm just wondering, for people that are, that do have a long history of familiarity with this character, how much of that hinges on their enjoyment of the films, because it's the voice that I hear when I think of Spider-Man. Yeah, and interestingly, for this, it's like that right end of high school, postgraduate. It takes him forever to graduate. That was. I think that's why I'm so warm to the films, because it matches my conception of the character. From effectively a nostalgia standpoint. More than anything else I've seen, and I wonder if I'm a little too biased toward this incarnation that might cloud some of my judgment.
No, I don't.
It didn't in the second, though. It didn't in the second.
I think that's very fair.
Yeah.
I mean, when I came into the Spider-Man comics more like in the late 80s, early 90s, just that's what I did. And so what was happening around that time was not only did you have like this new push of like what's happening in the Marvel universe. It was right on the cusp of like all of like the edgy 90s.
Right. When you got in, it was post-wedding, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I've always like Mary Jane Watson or Mary Jane Parker has always been like a major part of like Spider-Man lore for me. Except for around that same time, I remember there were a lot of you started to see like a lot of like throwback stories and anthologies, like stuff that was like golden age, or not golden age stuff, but like early Silver Age stuff, early stories. And I think that's why I enjoyed the Raimi films better. Is because I felt like the Raimi films felt like classic Spider-Man, because that's what he was going for. It's like kind of like pre-Conroy, for earlier stuff. You're absolutely right. Like I would say that these films do feel more like the intermediate comics. So I'm almost wondering if like when these films are done, if they do a new relaunch in like 10 years, like with a brand new Parker, if we're going to be dealing with like 90s Spider-Man, just like every iteration is just going to be like 10 years later in the comic book history. That'd be interesting to see.
So let me get this straight, not knowing the comics that you guys are really talking about. So Peter, in this movie, graduates from high school. Gwen is, at least in my mind, is gone. And you're telling me he starts to get more into Mary Jane, is that right? Is that like a drug reference?
Mary Jane's not even in high school in the comics. Like she doesn't come in until much.
That's
later.
what I mean. After high school, he starts getting more into Mary Jane.
Right.
Yeah.
He gets into Mary Jane, all right.
There might be some kind of drug reference going on there.
Well, speaking of drug references, we've got Harry Osborn.
Yeah.
Oh my! Hey, real quick, another live comment from another longtime friend of the Movie Bears podcast, Paul Alderete. He says, "Everyone looks so handsome. Hello, Bill."
Hey.
Hello, Paul.
So real quick on the Gwen Stacy thing, can we talk about the death sequence real quick?
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. So of course she's fallen down the shaft. We shoot the web. It stretches out like an arm, reaching out to grab for her. Was that a little too meta for you guys? A little too on the nose, like the hand reaching out sort of thing?
Maybe slight.
Maybe slight.
I've got to tell you, I didn't even really notice it till you mentioned it after.
Yeah.
I just saw the stuff coming out. I don't know. Maybe I was looking at something.
Oh my God! So I got to tell you, like that's happening, and we see the web in 3D heading for Mary Jane, and Jim's like, "Hope she doesn't get it in her eye."
And then she died, and I felt really bad. And then when she died, I felt really bad. Like, oh my God, I made a joke and she's dead.
I mean, the foreshadowing gave me a headache.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just too much with Dennis Leary, and
Wait a minute, you guys knew it was coming. I was totally surprised.
But the thing was, I did my best to approach it as because I'm one of these. I'm not, and I think Will's in my camp too, where I am not beholden to the comic book. There are different art forms. There are things that work in one that don't work in the other, and vice versa. And if I kind of kept myself as spoiler free as I could with the movie. I was expecting Gwen's death, but hoping for it not. And just as from a filmmaking standpoint, she's so effective in that role. Get 3 films out of her instead of 2. I mean, I just thought that was a dumb choice. One thing about the death scene that I thought was great was we didn't, and this is just like this was an element that's just like the comic, in that she's gone. And she doesn't have her deathbed. She doesn't have a deathbed scene. And that's somewhat refreshing in films because, I mean, what actor doesn't want to have one? And on top of that, you just don't see that often. Whether it's vanity elements or writers wanting to put last words in a character's mouth, that to me was probably the most effective part of her arc, of that you don't get to say the things you want to say, and it's quick, and you have to admire that particular choice, I thought.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, from somebody who didn't know what to expect at the end of the movie, her death really did catch me off guard. I didn't expect her to die in the movie, and I didn't expect her to. I absolutely expected when he was holding her body at the bottom of that clock tower or whatever it was, that her eyes were going to flutter open, and how many times have we seen that?
I have a friend on Facebook who's not read any of the comics, knows nothing about it, and she says, I felt really bad watching The Amazing Spider-Man. I looked over to my friend and said, any minute now, he's going to give her the magic kiss, and she's going to open her eyes, and it didn't happen, and I felt bad for saying that.
Good for the movie, though. Bill, I agree with you. Good for the movie for, first of all, surprising the audience, I think, or at least the audience who didn't know about it, and also subverting that expectation that, everything's going to be okay in the end.
I think the only thing that was a little rough for me about it was that I do felt that there was a little bit too much foreplay leading up to it, and by that I mean like all of the Captain Stacy stuff, all of the Gwen's. This film, I said before, and I kind of like danced around it in the pre-spoiler section. But when you really boil down what this film is about, like what this story is, it's the story of Peter Parker tries really hard not to get Gwen Stacy killed, but does so anyway. Like that is this movie. But you have Electro, and you've got Green Goblin, you've got the Rhino, and you've got all these other things in there as well. And we'll talk about those. But that's really what this movie is about, and they set the themes for it very early on. You keep getting all of these things about how really Gwen's life would be quote unquote better if they do break up, if she goes and does her thing in Oxford, if he doesn't keep like saying like, hey, I need to step away from you because of this responsibility, but oops, I'm back anyways. He keeps every time she gets away, he keeps like webbing her and pulling her back into his grasp. Yeah,
but come on, let's be fair too. She was so dumb sometimes, because like he's telling her like, you stay here, like stay out of danger, like what the fuck are you doing, like get out of here. And she's like, oh no, Peter, I'm gonna stay and help you.
I'm not saying that she's blameless. I'm just saying that like this film sets the seeds very, very early on that like it's going to come down to either she's going to die or she's going to come close to dying and he's going to realize it and break up with her at the end. It's going to be one of those two things. Now, as a comic fan, now this is one thing where I can say, like, I was spoiled on it, not only because, Gwen Stacy's role is to die, but she has this, one of the most famous comic book covers of all time is, like, where Spider-Man is holding Gwen Stacy, and, like, she's dead, and he's looking up, and, that's, like, one of the most famous, like, comic book things, and they actually dress her in the same outfit in that one of those last scenes as she wore in that comic book thing. So as soon as she was wearing that little like half green jacket and purple and black thing, I was like, she's not making it through this scene. But to be fair, that has nothing to do with the movie. That was a little that didn't impact it.
No.
And I did think they did miss an opportunity with the death sequence. Again with the storyline as it was. Probably wouldn't have fit as well, but in the comic, the death happens on the George Washington Bridge, and with New York being a character itself in Spider-Man, I would have preferred to have seen that carry over into film because the visuals I thought would have been phenomenal.
But then we wouldn't have gotten 3D, cogs
gears
flying at you for a web to like, and that was the other thing, right? So the cogs are falling down like random motion; they're flying around, but that web shoots straight and true, and somehow avoids all of those cogs as it goes in and reaches her.
He's that good.
I guess. Question for you guys. The origin of Electro, an aside here. Was anyone else getting like flashbacks to Superman 3?
Not necessarily in terms of the storyline, in terms of bad acting. Yeah. Woo!
Was that god-awful thing you had on TV the other day, babe?
Oh.
God-awful thing I had? No, that was Superman 2. Be quiet. You may no longer speak.
Very nice.
Oh, my God.
Superman 2 is not god-awful. Take it back. Take it back!
That street scene was laugh. All right, I'll take it back. I don't want to ruin it.
Depends on the cut you're talking about.
Did you show him the regular one or the Donner cut?
It was the regular one on TV. Okay, you don't have to take it back. The Donner cut was better.
Donner cut's better.
But anyway, but yeah, just the whole like kooky like, oh look at me, I'm a scientist and I'm socially awkward and I'm cracking jokes, but now I'm gonna, I don't know. I just.
Yeah, I gotta say the whole Electro thing. I mean, I do like Jamie Foxx. I just I don't know the whole. I mean, I don't know. I didn't understand it. Like, here's this guy. He supposedly worships Spider-Man, and just because Spider-Man forgot his name or something, I forget exactly what it was. Now all of a sudden, after he falls in the tank and he's electrified, he needs to destroy his idol. I just. And then the whole like German scientist thing, like it was really nuts.
Well, Electro's thing was after he falls in the pit or in the tank, and he becomes Electro, and then they have the Times Square scene. A quick aside: I thought the Times Square scene, just visually and as far as fights go, was one of my favorite sequences of the movie. Especially in 3D, there was a lot of these little electrical bolts that were coming out that I thought were some of the best looking things in the film. But one of the things that's so weird there is about the character motivation. I thought by and large, I did not like the character designs and the character motivations. In this one, you've got Electra who's got like hero worship. Like, man, Spider-Man talked to me that one time. I'm going to be a hero just like Spider-Man. Spider-Man and I are talking. Spider-Man says the cops aren't going to shoot at me. That one cop shoots at me. Totally Spider-Man's fault. So now I'm going to be a supervillain. It was way too sudden. Like, I could see like if you had chopped out a lot of the other plot lines in this and made one where you got to see Electro have more of an arc, like where he slowly becomes disillusioned with Spider-Man. Like maybe he even tries to like, hey, Spider-Man, this whole thing, this terrible thing is happening. Maybe I caused it, maybe I didn't, but we should go work together. And Spider-Man's like, no, fuck that. You shouldn't do that. That could have been a cool arc if we got to see him slowly like, I want to be a hero. Holy crap, I can't be it because I lack these other things that Peter Parker has. Now I'm going to have to be a villain. But instead, we had to get him to be Green Goblin's henchman, and we had to get him to be there quickly, so we had to do something really quickly, sudden turn on the dime, and the motivations fall apart kind of quickly.
And that Electro theme, man, that was driving me crazy.
Oh, like the kind of like dubsteppy Skrillex, like.
But like, it was almost like it was almost like Otis and Superman done by. It was like really, really annoying.
Oh yeah. So, all right. So we got Electro. Let's talk about Rhino, Paul Giamatti.
Okay. Okay, I have to preface this. I think Paul Giamatti is one of the most overrated actors of all time. I think he's been effective in some movies like American Splendor and even recently in Downton Abbey. I tremendous sympathy for his character there. But sometimes he acts so hard it hurts. And in this one was like, I am a rhino. I mean, I just never bought him realistically in a part like this for 1 second.
Don't you think somebody told him that he was actually doing voice acting for a cartoon? Like, just the way he said, just the way he, like, when he, at first, right, so he's got this bookended scenes of the movie, right? He's got the beginning action scene where he's this, like, Russian fucking madman in a truck, like, mowing people down, and he's like, at one point, Spider-Man's trying to stop a truck, and he's jumping on the truck, and I swear, Paul Giamatti's, like, shaking his fist, like, "Why, you think you can stop my truck, do you?" You know,
and then he's got the maniacal villain laugh, like,
yeah. It was just crazy. It's kind of cringeworthy to see an actor who, he's definitely overacting here, but I gotta wonder if it really wasn't totally intentional. Because I mean, you go back to some of the movies you mentioned, Saving Mr. Banks. I thought he was great in that movie too. When he's more understated, he's better.
Yeah,
I agree.
But yeah, and then that's another. And then you got the bookended scene. So I forget what happened at the end of that first scene, like what happened to him. But anyway, he pops up at the end of the movie. He's in the rhino suit, and he's terrorizing the streets of New York. And he's now Rhino. And no, I just I didn't understand. Like, how did he go from crazy Russian truck driver to Rhino?
There were problems here. Like, the opening sequence, if it was by itself and Paul Giamatti's character did not turn out to be the Rhino, I would have been fine with. Because by itself, it was just a kind of over-the-top, dumb thug in a, doing a heist, and Peter Parker saves the day. That's what Peter Parker does all the time to supervillains, or not even supervillains, just like a lot of the cool Spider-Man stories are him just dealing with like I'm robbing a bank or I'm mugging someone in an alleyway. It's just like, kind of everyday heroics. That's cool Spider-Man stuff. And here we've got Paul Giamatti. He's over the top. He's doing this heist where he's stealing these Oscorp, like, tank things, these little energy things. And at the end of it, it's like the best he does is outrun Spider-Man for a while before he gets webbed up. What I don't get, so obviously we turn him into the Rhino at the end. Of all of the different villains that are in that prison, because we know at the end we've got like Green Goblin's in jail, and the guy comes and says, "Hey, we've got this equipment that we got from Oscorp. Let's make more of you. Let's start the plan." Why do they pick this dude? Like, what is it that they saw in this guy? Like, hey man, this guy, this dumbass who evaded Peter Parker or evaded Spider-Man for about 5 blocks. Let's put him in the suit. That's what I don't get. Like, if it was such a weird choice. Like, obviously they wanted to put Paul Giamatti in the Rhino suit, but the movie doesn't justify it. It's just like, yeah, fuck it, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of waste of actors, Chris Cooper as the old man Osborn.
Yeah, Norman Osborn. Yeah.
Another waste of a good actor. I mean, I don't know why they take great actors and put them in these roles where they have practically nothing to do except make themselves look stupider. I don't get it. Chris Cooper is a great actor, and that scene was really ridiculous. I don't know. You guys want to talk more about Rhino? I'm sorry if I derailed.
No. Did anyone else have anything to say about Rhino? Like,
no, I have nothing else to say about the Rhino.
All I will say is that scene at the end was probably should have been like a stinger scene, but the way they put it at the end of that movie was just kind of weird for me. And the whole thing about the kid walks out and nobody can make the kid wants to bring the kid back.
The cop is like, "No, Mom, you're not allowed to step there.
Neither will I, because I don't want
to." Yeah, it was. That could have been a very touching scene, because that's what they were going for. Like, Mark Webb didn't want to end the movie on a bummer. Like, he didn't want to end it with Gwen Stacy dead. He didn't want to end it with, the end of, I think Spider-Man 2 ended with kind of a, or is it the first Spider-Man? Ended with kind of like a, wistful note. I don't think they wanted to do that here. He wanted to end it upbeat. but they could have done that scene a lot better. Honestly, having the kid and step out and do all of that stuff, to me, that was a distraction. It didn't really feel warranted. It's the type of stuff that Spider-Man does, and he does it well, but the movie did not do it well. So to me, it kind of like, it forced Spider-Man into a scene that I didn't want to see him doing it, because I've seen him do it much better other places.
Yeah.
I liked it.
I want to get back on something that I liked. Sally Field.
I was just about to ask about Sally Field.
As Aunt May. Let's get on to something. I think she had probably one of the best scenes in the movie when she comes in the room and she discovers him figuring stuff out about his dad or something like that, and she starts asking him the questions, and then they have that whole discussion. And it's a really touching moment, and I thought, wow, I mean, this is what good actors given a good scene and good direction can do. Even in these kind of movies, you can have this. Movie could have used more of some stuff like that. I really like that scene a lot. My standout scene in the movie, probably the only one that I'll remember.
Mm.
Yeah, I think she's such an effective actress. One thing that I think would have been a nice touch is if they would they mention that she's in nursing school with people so much younger than her to help them. We should have seen a little bit of that. Because she is an effective actress. The one thing I got to say is, I'm old enough to remember Sally Field in just post-ingenue roles, and in comics, Aunt May was always the oldest person on the planet, and that makes me feel old. Sally Field in that part does make me feel old, I gotta say.
It's weird because the scene she has, there's a scene at the end of this movie that was an extremely effective scene where it was just Peter and Aunt May talking, so just Sally Field and Garfield. And again, I like Garfield's ability just to talk with people, just like he has something about him that when he's on screen with just him and Sally Field, or him and Emma Stone, or him and Dane DeHaan, like that's where I'm kind of peaked, my interest is peaked. But this scene is really, really interesting because it's right after Gwen's died, and they're kind of talking about like what you do with that emotional baggage. And what's so interesting about it is like Sally Field's advice, or Aunt May's advice, is kind of like, we'll take all of that old stuff, kind of toss it aside and put those feelings away. But so it's weird advice, but she is so damn good in that scene that it makes it feel like, yeah, that is amazing advice. So it's one of those things where I think she outacted her the script in that. And I really wish they... Go ahead.
Why is it weird advice?
Because this is a woman who has she's recently dealt with a lot of losses herself. She's dealt with the loss of Richard and I forget Peter's mother's name. Bad comic fan. She's also dealt with the death of Uncle Ben. This is not a woman who, at least from everything that we've seen, is a hide your feelings, push all of that aside. She's usually more of the like, let's get through this. You have to, sometimes you have to kind of muscle through these things, but you always have someone here who can help you. Aunt May's role was always to be kind of like supportive to Peter in ways that, maybe he didn't know that he needed. This would have been a fantastic scene where like she could have said something to the effect of, you know what? You just lost someone. I've lost someone too. I understand how that feels.
It seemed a little pat,
Yeah, like, or maybe her advice could have still worked if she had if the script had let her explain it more, work more with it. But
I don't know.
I
didn't get that feeling. Maybe that you guys got. To me, it felt like what she was saying was, yeah, this stuff happens, and yeah, it's horrible, but like, you do just have to move past it, and sometimes to do that, you do have to pack it up and put it away. Doesn't mean you have to get rid of it. That doesn't mean you can ever revisit it. But it does mean you have to move on with your life and clear some roadblocks out of your way. And I don't think that made her emotionless. I don't think it made it seem like she was, becoming the stoical Vulcan or anything like that. I just thought it was neat to see Aunt May kind of a little tough. And I think that's what Peter needed in that moment. Because loving support, I mean, I don't know. I've dealt with grief, and I get tired of loving support. Sometimes you need someone to shake you by the lapels and say, look, yeah, it sucks, but you need to get on with it. Let's go.
Maybe, and I would buy that if we'd gotten to see more of the grief, but the film wanted to shake him out of it so quickly to get him into an action-packed, high-beat, upbeat finale that we got, death of Gwen Stacy, suck it up, Peter, and now we're fighting the Rhino.
And I think again, I think it comes back to the movie had too much in it, and really had to pack everything in and make quick transitions, and maybe some of them felt rushed. And I think maybe that's what you might be thinking about.
Right. This film is like the king of bloatedness.
Can we talk?
So full.
Can we talk about Harry Osborn and Dane DeHaan and Green Goblin?
I liked Dane DeHaan as Harry Osborn. I thought it was terrible as Green Goblin.
Yeah. Co-signed.
Yep. But that was, to me, some of the most ridiculous parts of the movie were around his character. You wwere mentioning earlier, Jim, about what's his face being wasted, Cooper. Yeah. And that scene in particular, I mean, it's like they threw every bad daddy cliche that you could throw in. I mean, and to the point where it was ridiculous. When it's like, I sent you away because you were a disappointment. He was 10 years old. What the hell can you achieve at 10?
Just to show you what kind of a real dick I am.
And like all of a sudden, man, he's mastered that damn bat thing he flies on, in like seconds. There was so many ridiculous things around, and I did like his performance. When I initially saw the trailers, when you saw the visuals of this, emo-eyed Harry, and you're like, I really didn't expect to like him as much as I did, but I felt bad for him because the biggest holes in the script were ones that he had to fall in again and again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of the better scenes in this movie for me was the scene where Garfield and DeHaan are by the water, like skipping stones and just kind of talking with one another. And the reason I like this scene so much is like this is two characters who we're supposed to learn or supposed to know or what have you that these two characters used to have a good friendship like 10 years ago, like when they were 10 years old. This could have easily been an awkward, clumsy scene, but Garfield and DeHaan brought enough. I don't know. They played off of each other well enough that I bought that they were like two friends who used to be close and have gone their own ways. Like I really bought that from the moment where they have this like kind of like I don't know whatever hug at the Osborne place to that skipping stone scene. I'm really invested, and I'm right there with you. I saw in the trailers like the way DeHaan looked with his little swept hair and all that.
Oh man, when he's like, "Well, isn't that the question of the day?"
But then I see it, and I'm really, really happy with it. And then he gets Green Goblinized and acts like a dickhead from like it kind of out of nowhere. Like again, it's one of those things where I get why they went from point A to point B with this, but it could have been a more gradual ramp up, like over the course of a full film. But because they had to do so much, like he goes from zero to evil like that.
Yeah, same. Yeah, and it's very similar to the Electro, switch over. The thing is, I really liked in spite of the way that they totally almost fumbled the relationship between Harry and Peter. In other words, they had a whole movie before this movie to maybe lay some seeds about them even knowing each other. Totally missed that opopportunity.
Yeah, that was a little bit of. Remember Family Ties? Like all of a sudden, Alex had this friend, that was like a lifelong friend, and you never saw him before in the series, and that happened like 3 or 4 times. Yeah, it was a little bit like that.
Especially since the first film had Chris Cooper in it, like we could have built on that relationship too. Like there were ties that could have happened.
Right. So my retention for movies isn't that great, and so I'm sitting watching this movie, and he's talking about how they were best buds in school, and I'm like, did I like forget all that from the first movie? But apparently they just put it in here. And in spite of that, I still liked the chemistry that those two guys had, and I would have liked to see that story, just be expanded a little bit more and not have that stupid switchover like when he got sick. And by the way, the dad was how old when he was dying of this disease? And like he says, "You're gonna have this disease," and like 2 scenes later, he's sick.
Right.
You're gonna have this disease in 10 minutes.
Oh man,
kind of pulled me out of it. And again, here's where they had to kind of rush things into characters and to plots just to drive this, just to get to the next plot point. It's too bad because I think there's a much better movie in there. maybe if you took one of the villains out, or I don't know.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you had left Harry's downfall to be an element of the third film, you could have seen the shadowing of it at the end of this.
Right.
I just think that would have been much more effective. But then you were stuck with a shitty villain in Electro for the entire film. So it would have been very different.
What the hell is with Sony? Like, Jesus, every Spider-Man movie, like has to have 3 villains. You know what I mean? Like that happened in the original series. You know what I mean?
Well, is this one of those comic setups that they're getting to? Like,
well, that's part of this is like franchise building, but part of this is also I feel like they were trying to distance themselves from the Raimi films. Because if you think about the Raimi films, you have the rise of Harry Osborn, and then Harry Osborn, James Franco as Green Goblin in the third film. So I think what they were trying to do was try to avoid introducing Green Goblin in the third film, but of this franchise, so that they weren't kind of following the same beats as the first one. I get that, but the problem is this film had too many narratives. Let's really list them out. We've got the Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy, like will they, won't they, and how that pans out. You've got Max Dillon, the Oscorp employee who has a Spider-Man hero complex. You've got the Harry Osborn, I'm back in town, and all of a sudden I need your help, Peter, I need your blood. And then you've got Peter dealing with the family secret of his Richard Parker and his secret magic blood that lets him be Secret Magic Spider-Man. There were so many... that's part of why I hate the Richard Parker story. But there are 4 stories in this. And if you would cut 2 of those out, if you would cut out maybe if this film here, if you cut out the Richard Parker, a lot of those scenes, and if you cut out the...
I say cut out Electro.
Well,
except for the fact it was visually pretty, it story-wise, it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. What I would do is I would take that time, I would cut the Richard Parker stuff, I would cut the Green Goblin stuff, I would leave the Harry stuff, and then I would spend more time making Electra good. Because you can make an interesting story out of that character, but you have to develop him, and that's what they didn't do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Hey, I have a quick question as we get to wrapping. It's a question that's been on my mind. I think it's the most important question about this whole movie. I hope you guys can shed some light. It's really been bothering me. How the hell did Electro's suit turn into electricity and transmit with him? Like he was wearing armor. Molecules. Is that what it was? Unstable molecules?
That's what when you talk Marvel, you just say unstable molecules.
Okay, so there wasn't an explanation.
In the movie, there wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They bought the eels from Reed Richards.
There you go.
I guess. Wow. Okay. All right, guys. God, I feel like there's still.
By the way, a lot of electrical engineers were having heart attacks during that movie.
Yeah.
All the shit they pulled to change the laws of physics were kind of crazy.
Especially when when Spider-Man used his webbing, which apparently doesn't burn and it conducts electricity. He used it to chain together the power conduits and shoot one big Death Star blast at Electro and blow him up.
Mm-hmm.
Could you do that in real life, Mr. Electricalness?
No.
No, you couldn't do that. Okay.
Not out of thin air like he did it.
Before we go, any comments about the Mystique?
That was just a commercial, right? That was just a commercial.
It was so weird.
Yeah, I'm expecting some kind of, because
sort of tie-in, yeah.
Because with the last movie, didn't we have that scene where all of a sudden the dude appeared in the jail cell? That was the Stinger in the last Spider-Man movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the story behind that? Was it something that Singer owed Sony a film? And to get out of that, that was an agreement that they had.
I have no idea.
There's some kind of crazy backstory behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I knew the source of it, but I thought with the Marvel Cinematic Universe celebrating the interconnectedness, especially in these post-credit scenes, that they would have done something a little more clever than just the 20-second trailer.
Felt like a cop-out. I'm really, Marvel? I've just gotten used to you giving me these things, and now you're not going to give it to me?
Well, I think that's why I think that Rhino scene at the end would have been great as a Stinger, but...
So, Little story. I saw it as a press screener, which means like yay, get to see it early. But I'm sitting there with all of these people in the audience, and we sit through the credits, and they didn't put the little Mystique trailer at the end of it. So at the end of it, you hear all of these press people just like, oh, what the fuck. And I'm gonna have to go look at it online. Like I heard that from a lot of people. Like that they were sitting. They said, I came here just to see the Mystique trailer.
Oh my god.
It's worth, but it was just kind of like I didn't get a chance to see it then.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good old J-Law. She brings all the boys to the yard.
This is the app you need, guys, right here. It's called it's called Anything After. You just punch it into the movie and it tells you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sweet. All right, guys. Well, there's a lot that we could still talk about. Unfortunately, we are a little long on the tooth in time. Aw, that's an adorable Spider-Man.
Oh, God.
This is my Spidey.
Aw.
Oh, the only things I got handy are DC stuff. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, all I can offer is my Clark Kent Domo. But he doesn't really fit.
Oh, I do have. This is a pro. I have Hero Bear.
Hero Bear.
Nice.
Love Hero
That's
Bear.
Awesome.
Listeners, the people who are just on the podcast not viewing, we are showing like all of our cool Marvel, DC, and indie comic goodies that are sitting around our desks.
You know what? I'm gonna change mine from Clark Kent Domo to He-Man Pop.
Nice.
Scary.
All right. Anyway. All right, guys. So, good conversation. Awesome stuff. Let's transition real quick. Quick, dirty, fast. Let's do some plugs. Jim, what do you got this week?
I'm going to be quick. I'm just going to plug our local Movie Bear group again. It's the Botop Movie Bears. That's BOTOP Movie Bears. Find us on Facebook under that, under Botop Movie Bears. We got Godzilla coming up in a couple of weeks, and we're going to try to get a movie outing to go see that, and there's a lot of great movies coming up. So watch Facebook if you're local to Tucson and want to come out with the Bears. Also look for your local Movie Bear group. There's quite a few of them that are springing up still and still thriving. I'm sure they'll be doing some movie screenings that they would love to have more people join them for. So, yep, that's it.
Awesome. And let's see. We'll go to Will next. What do you got?
Check out my blog, thelinduslist.com. I do movie reviews. I do a lot of them. I'll have one later this month for Belle, which is a new, kind of a British drama. And I think I'm going to get Neighbours, which we screened at South by Southwest, up by its release date this month as well. Other than that, check out on both Netflix and Amazon. The Great Beauty is available for streaming. That's the film that took the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. Really, really, really solid Italian flick. I'm not going to go into too much. We only have so much time, but check it out, The Great Beauty. It's a really good movie, and it deserved all of the cool praise that it got.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. How about you, Bill? What do you got?
Okay, well, naturally, I want to plug the Comic Book Bears podcast. Our best nexus point to contact us is our Facebook page as Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes and go to the Libsyn page. If anyone wants to do web design for me for free, please do, because I've been squatting on comicbookbears.com for 4 years now. And if I can I get 2 plugs in?
Yes,
please. Okay,
please.
great. The first plug I want to do is a film plug. Apart from comic books and the Green Bay Packers and Cary Grant, another thing that I have a huge sense of being a fan for is rock music. And I saw this film 2 years ago as part of the CBGB Film Festival. It's The Rise and Fall of the Clash. It was put out on DVD and Blu-ray by Shout Factory, I think just about 2 weeks ago. There's a truncated version of it that's on rotation and on VH1 Classic, and it's a really, really effective depiction of a band that had everything going for it, and almost in a blink of an eye, nothing was going right. And so, in terms, just as Jim said, that he has a soft spot for documentaries, I have a very soft spot for documentaries. If you locked me in them and told me locked me in a room and told me that's all you can watch for 4.5 days, I'd be like, all right, just make sure I can pee somewhere. Yeah. So that's my movie plug, and if I can just make a plug for something that I'm really proud to be part of. If you go to kingbonepress.com, there is an anthology, Banthology 3. It's all rock-oriented comic book stories.
Wow.
And I have a short story in there that I wrote with an awesome artist from Chicago, Elliot Junkyard, and a lot of my good friends and people I don't even know are part of this project. And I think if people are familiar with rock-oriented comics like Phonogram or Love and Rockets, it hits that sweet spot too. So I hope you check that out, and that's Banthology 3.
What about the Archies?
What about the Archies?
Are they included?
Oh, I cannot. I've been on 4 podcasts that have been Archie-centric. I need a break from Archie.
I was just rediscovering them the other day.
Yeah.
Aww.
Yeah.
Right.
If you do want to check out Archie, there was a recent arc in the comic book, which was an Archie's World Tour that had all of the music-oriented characters from Archie, with like Josie and the Pussycats and these other obscure ones, and this like Riverdale's like version of Adele. I mean, it's a lot of fun.
Wow.
Cool.
Nice.
So if you want to check that out. So.
Nice. Awesome.
Thanks, Joel.
Well, I'm glad you plugged the Comic Book Bears podcast, because if you didn't, I was going to. But, yeah, so for me this week, I'm cheating. It's not a movie plug. I'm just going to plug some motherfucking Game of Thrones, because that show has been really awesome. Really have been enjoying it. Last episode was a little slow for me, but overall, I'm so happy with this season. I'm glad it's kind of broken that mold of, like, nothing happens until the final episode, final couple episodes. It's been a lot more even, a lot of really cool stuff happening. If you have not gotten on board the Game of Thrones train yet, get you some HBO Go, catch up. The DVDs were on sale the other day on Amazon.com. Not sure if they still are, but catch up. It's really good. I love where a lot of the character plots are going. It's one of my favorite things about Sundays now. I'm going to be sad when the season's over. We're like halfway through already. Oh my god! But good stuff.
Yeah, this season's been amazing, and we'll talk offline, Brad. The last episode had some cool stuff that I need to talk to other spoiler-friendly people with. So we won't talk about it on this show, obviously, because people, But Brad, let's talk offline about this, because
totally.
Gotta chat.
Absolutely. All right.
They are still on sale, by the way, on Amazon.
Are they? Awesome. Glad to see that's still going on. Sweet. So you heard it. Check it out. Game of Thrones. Awesome stuff. Bill, just wanted to take a moment to thank you so much for joining us this week. It's always a pleasure to have guys from the Comic Book Bears podcast, especially, we love talking to you guys, and just thank you so much for being here, for, offering such great insight, for being such great eye candy on the show. Guys, seriously, if you're listening to the audio version, you don't know what you're missing by not watching the video live. I'm telling you. So Bill, you're awesome as always, and thank you to the Comic Book Bears podcast for loaning you to to us for a night. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's always a blast to be on with you guys, and maybe consider having me on with something that's not comic books, because I don't mind the break.
I was just gonna say, because you mentioned your love of documentaries. If there's ever a movie, Bill, that you're jazzed for that is not comic book related, we would have you on anytime. You're awesome.
Okay,
so just
great.
let us know. Yeah.
Missed the boat with draft day. I do hope you guys see that, because it's a much better film than I was anticipating.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Might have to check that one out. How do you feel about $1 Million Arm? Are you going to see that one?
Yep. I'll see that.
Yeah.
I'm jazzed for that one, actually. Speaking of Life of Pi.
I know, right? Pi Patel with a baseball.
Yeah.
So.
I haven't seen Life of Pi. I hated the book.
Oh, really?
I've never seen the film. My partner loves it to death. Loves the film to death, but I just...
I saw the film first, and I loved the film. I read the book, and I didn't really like the book very much. So maybe give it a chance.
We saw the film like 3 or 4 times, didn't we, babe?
Yeah. We saw it 3 times in theaters, and I've watched it on DVD like 3 times. Yeah. It's
visually amazing. It really is a masterclass in taking something and putting it on the screen in a way that invokes emotion with just what you see.
Yeah, and not just visually, just the the way that the story makes you think about a lot of things. You know, I watch it whenever I want to feel like I don't know, when I want to expand my mind, I guess, and really think heavy thoughts. I put it on. It's a good movie.
Okay.
But
That's
anyway,
some fun after the chat.
yeah, I guess I just added another plug for Life of Pi, which I've plugged like 12 times on this show, but that's okay. But yeah,
It's a movie worth plugging.
That's the drinking game for this show.
All right, Richard Parker. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining us this week. Those of you who's been hanging out with us live, always good to have you join us. Those of you who are listening to the audio version of the show, as I mentioned, you can always check out the video version on our YouTube channel. Always some good antics there that you're missing by not seeing the picture, so give it a check out. All of our episodes are available on our website, moviebearspodcast.com. We're in the process of doing a little web revamp ourselves. So if we find some good coding help, Bill, maybe we'll send them your way too.
Okay, great.
We put out a little ad the other day looking for someone, which no one replied to. So now I'm like, you know, trying out Squarespace and trying to figure it out myself. And my web skills are from like 1997, back when we had frames. So I'm a little out of practice, but anyway. All right, well, guys, we'll talk to you all next week. Not sure what we're doing yet for our movie choice. Jim's doing something really weird with his camera. Why are we looking into your eye? I don't know what's going on right now.
Jim, do you have hazel eyes?
I think they used to be blue, but they may have turned hazel.
They're like blue-green? Yeah, that's me too.
Yeah. Blue, green is sexy.
When I got the Osborne disease, they changed. I don't know what happened.
Oh, my goodness.
It's weird. He got that disease in the course of this podcast.
All right, everyone. Have a good week. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.
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 Take care.